Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the April 12th Town of Islip Planning Board meeting. The meeting was called for the purpose of R Squared Development, LLC, which is on Lakeland Avenue. Prior to that, we have one item that'll go pretty quickly. If I can get Mr. Gonzalez up to the podium. We have a site plan modification decision item, Detox Investment, LLC, SP 2015-078, east side of 8th Street, number 141, north of 2nd Avenue, Brentwood. Applicant requests parking relaxation, determination, and landscaping relaxation in connection with the demolition of an existing building and construction of a new two-story drug rehabilitation center. Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This application had a public hearing on March 15th of this year where the applicant was requesting a parking relaxation and landscaping relaxation in connection with the demolition of an existing building and construction of a new two-story drug rehabilitation center. At that hearing, the board crafted a few more conditions to be added on. However, a decision was reserved to allow staff and the applicant. At that hearing, the board crafted a few more conditions to be added on. However, a decision was reserved to allow staff and the applicant to draft an updated version. That revised version is before you tonight in agreement with the applicant. For the record, those added conditions were as follows. Removing the ambiguity of the word unfinished when describing the cellar storage, formalizing the facility's 20-bed limit, limiting the use to drug rehabilitation center only, and limiting the operation to drop-off service, non-outpatient use only. Based on this, staff recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board on this?
Yes.
Mr. Luca?
Has the applicant signed the conditions?
They have, it's not in that packet, but I do have signed conditions.
Anything further from the board? Is there a motion?
Can we arrange microphones?
Motion to grant subject to the conditions.
Motion by Mr. Luca to grant subject to the conditions. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Bruno. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It passes. Thank you. The item on the agenda tonight that I think all of you are here for is secret public hearing, R Squared Development, LLC, CZ 2017-009, southeast corner of Lakeland Avenue and 11th Street, Sayville, 458 Lakeland Avenue. Pursuant to state environmental quality review regulations, part 617.8, the Islip Town Board as lead agency is hereby requesting public comments on the draft scope to identify potential significant adverse impacts involving the establishment of an Island Hills Planned Development District in order to construct 1,365 apartments and accessory commercial uses. Public comment will be accepted at this meeting, and written comments will be accepted at the Planning Department until April 20th, 2018. Just so you know, this public hearing tonight is really for us to develop the scope for the environmental impact study that will be done. So what we're asking for tonight is not whether you're in favor of it or opposed to the project itself. That will be a future public hearing if it goes forward. Tonight's purpose really is to get any environmental concerns or infrastructure concerns that you feel should be addressed. So when you're called up to speak, we'd ask you to keep your comments limited to any of those topics for this evening's hearing. The purpose of scoping, as I just said, is to identify significant environmental conditions and resources which may be affected by the project, eliminate relevant impacts or issues, define reasonable alternatives for avoiding specific impacts which must be included in the environmental impact statement. When complete, the scoping session process allows the Town of Islip and other involved agencies to reach an agreement on the relevant issues. How to participate in tonight's hearing, we will call you up 5 speakers at a time. If you wanted to speak, you should have gotten a number ahead of time. When your number is called, please step up to the side. Over here, I'll call you up in groups. When your individual number is called, please come to the podium. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak, informing the board of the environmental impacts you feel that need to be studied in the EIS, as well as potential alternatives for how the property could be developed. Written comments will also be accepted until the close of business on Friday, April 20th, 2018. At this point, I'm going to call planning staff to give a report.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
That's not on.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the public. The general location of this project is located on the south side of Sunrise Highway, the west side of Lakeland Avenue in Sayville. A general description of the proposed project: the site is approximately 114 acres. The proposal includes 1,365 apartments, 27 buildings, 6 to 9 phases of development. A sewage treatment plant is proposed in the first phase. A perimeter park of 24 acres is proposed, along with 34 acres of interior open space. It's approximately 8 to 10 years for build-out. This is the conceptual site plan. I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Joyce. I'm just going to familiarize you with some of the topics of discussion this evening regarding the overall scoping process. First, we're going to look to have natural environmental resources addressed by the community. This includes items such as soils and topography, water resources, the ecology of the site, and any threatened or endangered species which are impacted by the development of the property. We also have human environmental resources. This includes the impacts of vehicular traffic and impacts upon the roadways in general, land use, zoning, and the planning surrounding this particular site, community facilities and services, the community character, and cultural resources on the property, notably as well historical resources. Miscellaneous impacts involving construction-related impacts during construction of any proposed project of this property, cumulative impacts, adverse impacts that cannot be avoided through the development of this property, effects on energy resources, and growth-inducing aspects from the location of any proposed development on this site. Further, it's also to indicate any alternatives to be studied in the context of this overall proposal. This would be alternatives aside from the direct proposal for how the site could be developed, including the no action option, development per the existing zoning of the premises, and the proposed project at a reduced yield. With that, we have an example of one such parameter, this in particular, the current traffic impact study parameters and their locations. In this case, the blue highlighted roadways indicate roads on which traffic counts will be collected, and the red dots indicate where turning movements will be assessed for vehicular traffic. This is just one example of many items that would be collected and studied in the course of the environmental impact statement. With that, I will turn it back over to the Planning Board Chairman, Mr. Friedland.
Thank you. At this point, we're going to call up speakers who'd like to be heard on this and to help us raise any issues that you feel appropriate for both either environmental and or infrastructure. So if you have numbers 1 through 5, please step up. Number 1 is come right up to the podium. 2 through 5, just line up on the side here. And when you come up, just please state your name for the record so that we can keep it in the record. Thank you.
My name is Thomas Santarelli. I live at 102 Park Avenue, Bay Shore. In the early 1970s, when the Southwest Sewer District was constructed, in order to install the sewage pipes, water from the underground streams had to be pumped out for weeks using a series of pipes inserted deep into the ground. Nobody knew it then that the pumping of those streams diverted them in other directions, mainly under houses that have basements. Now those homes have cracks in the floor that force water up, causing floods as high as 2 feet. It also causes cracking in the foundation, sinking and shifting of the house, not to mention mold and mildew problems. That's just in Bay Shore. Based on a map of underground streams from the United States Coast Guard, the streams begin at 11 feet or less, and the further north you go, the streams rise from 11 to 20 feet, and a little further, 21 to 30 feet deep. We already have problems with cesspools leaching nitrates into the Great South Bay, the loss of the shellfish industry, and beaches closed because of high bacteria counts. We have high bacteria counts at local beaches in areas where there are sewers and filled-in cesspools. According to the United States Environmental Protection Agency, concerning on-site sewage plants, and this is a quote, the most serious documented problems involve contamination of surface waters and groundwaters with disease-causing pathogens and nitrates. Other problems include excessive nitrogen discharges to sensitive coastal waters, the phosphorus pollution of inland surface waters, which increases algae growth and lowers dissolved oxygen levels. Contamination of important shellfish beds and swimming beaches by pathogens is a concern in some coastal regions. If Reichler is permitted to build these 1,300-plus apartments, the amount of processed water will raise the underground streams, causing massive flooding. The water will force its way through the cesspools and leaching grounds of homes, forcing more nitrogen into the bay. It will also cause damage to the foundations of these homes. I urge anyone that lives in the vicinity of this project to hire professional engineers to document the current condition of the foundations of your homes and have your attorney put Islip Town and Reichler on notice that they will be liable for all damages caused by this on-site sewage plant.
My name is Barbara Maloney. I live on Mobile Street, around the corner from the golf course. I have lived in Sayville for the last 40 years. My home is situated behind the Cherry Avenue soccer field on the north side and next to the forest, which is overseen by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. This area contains over half of the world's population of the endangered plant, sand Plangarordia. This plant is the only plant in New York State on the federal endangered species list. It grows in native grasslands along the northeast coast. On Long Island, significant remnant populations remain only at Sayville, Hempstead Plains, and Montauk. Sand Plangarordia needs a prairie habitat dominated by native bunch grasses, especially little bluestem. This flower is also threatened by the common cottontail rabbit, and therefore the flower has been surrounded by fencing to keep the rabbits out. Due to the relative proximity of the Island Hills Golf Course to this protected area, it is a strong possibility that the sand Plangarordia may exist on the grounds of the golf course. I strongly encourage a thorough investigation for this endangered plant. This information is from a 2003 article written by a woman from the Nature Conservancy, and I've spoken to the Department of Environmental Conservation of New York State, and I will give you that information. Thank you. You're welcome.
My name is Diane Bronson, and I've lived for 45 years at 63 Cary Avenue in Sayville. Cary Avenue faces the Island Hills Golf Course. I am also a recent breast care survivor. I've since learned that living next to a golf course isn't the best thing for your health, due to all the chemicals, fertilizers, and pesticides that have been used and applied for all these years. Years ago, we were unaware of the toxic effects that this would have on our health, but today we know better. My concern is what chemicals and carcinogens are in the soil that can be dangerous to all of us living nearby. I would like to know what kind of testing will be done before construction, and if construction is started, on our soil, our air, the equipment that's being used, and of course our water supply. If there's any issues, what would be done to alleviate these conditions? These questions need to be answered, and the scope should be expanded to include all these. We do not want another Love Canal on our hands in our quaint town of Sayville, New York.
Hi, my name is Bernice Corbin. I live in Sayville on Pine Street. My main concern actually is I don't mind the construction of housing. I am very much against strip malls, but I am devastated by the idea of 4-story buildings. I don't see why the people around have to live under the shadow of Queens in our own town. We don't need it because it'll only be the beginning of more. 4 stories is not acceptable. The sewer systems that go with the volume of apartments that are being considered is, I can say if it's contained, but if it's going to be leaching, it's going to be right down there where the kids swim. Things are bad enough already, but it's only going to get worse. If there's a promise of a sewer system along with this whole gig, I really think that we should be thinking about a sewer system for our area anyway, without having to make a deal for 4-story buildings. Also, another thing that I am concerned about is all of this housing. I have been into a lot of developments, and I will tell you, in the spring, there is beautiful amount of birds and butterflies and bees, but after they start applying the things to the greenery, there are no birds, there are no bees, there are no butterflies, there are no bugs. And this happens every year, because every year I'm working in these closed communities, and this is what I see. We have to not allow that. I don't know what kind of environment they're going to have in the residential area, but I hope that it will be limited, because at least in the golf courses recently, they're not allowed to use things that impact on our bees. And I really hope that you consider that. That's what I have to say.
Thank you for having this meeting. My name is Barbara Fitzpatrick. I've been in Sable for 25, 30 years, and I would like to address the carbon footprint that will be had by what's going on, and also, and looking at the notes that you had up before, that it will take 8 to 10 years to complete the construction. That's an awfully long time to have the community in a disruptive state. And I would hope that anybody that has to make a decision has to sit in the expressway in traffic, because that's what's going to happen to the Oakdale merge. We cannot handle this. It is just overwhelming to think of, and the flavor and the culturalness of our small town will be lost. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Linda McCrae, and I live in Dorm Road, 2 streets away from the golf course. I've quietly and serenely lived in coexistence with the Island Hill Golf Course for 47 years. I am extremely concerned about the future plans of the Gray Barn PDD proposal. To maintain the pristine golf course for over 100 years, many pesticides, metals, and herbicides have been used in abundance. How are the local residents going to be protected from the enormous disturbance of soil? How will the air quality be monitored along the perimeter and local streets? With the large scope of this project, huge amounts of soil will be needed to be removed. How will you keep our streets clean from contaminants? What is the standard for clean trucks? How will this information be shared? In addition, the property is located very close to Green Creek in the Great South Bay. How will the water usage of such a dense population explosion affect our aquifers, our bay? How will you address the emissions of an additional 2,500 cars into the local area? This project calls for 2,388 parking spaces, only 1.7 per apartment unit, and there is no mass transit nearby. Where will these additional cars be allowed to park? I am very concerned over the pollution to our air. The existing traffic along Lakeland averages over 14,000 cars daily, according to the study done by Nelson and Pope in 2010. I am concerned the addition of more than 25,000 cars will severely impact the emergency vehicles that travel that road. Also, the services having to service an additional population of over 2,000 people is a concern in its own right. It is already difficult to exit Chester Road or Marion Street
onto Lakeland. How will this problem be addressed with the additional vehicles? This will definitely impact the quality of our life. What, if anything, will be done to address the already congested Oakdale merge? The basis of these concerns arise partly from the Sunrise Highway Corridor traffic study done in 2009. There was a recommendation in one of the appendixes that said, retain existing residents AAA zoning on the Island Hills Country Club and preserve the existing oasis of open space. If necessary, an actual yield would only be 107 units if developed under the existing residents, AAA. In conclusion, I am concerned over these very critical environmental issues. We have lived with the benefit of a peaceful, pristine, natural setting 300 feet from my home. I've watched many types of wildlife live there. I am concerned that the open spaces that is kept and created is an important aesthetic and scenic quality. I'm very concerned about the inherent ecological and hydrological sensitivity that this zoning change would bring about.
I'm Anthony Palmieri. I live at 47 Cary Avenue. Okay, in May of 2017, I had written a letter to the board, okay, which I did not receive a response, indicating that no one has any concern for the individuals living around the golf course. Okay, in my letter, I had stated that my concerns were, okay, for fire department, police department, sewage, okay, emergency services, and parking, okay? To that effect, after seeing the plans, okay, of Gray Barn, okay, I see that we don't have adequate parking for the residents. The overflow is going to go into my street. I live right on Cary Avenue, okay? There's a parking lot that's going to be directly in front of my home, okay? And on the southern tip of the plan, okay, it's a heavily congested area with homes and parking lots. All those parking lots face private homes. We're going to be smelling all kinds of combustions when they start up these cars on a daily basis and when they come home at night. And when they can't find a spot to park, they're going to be parked in front of our homes. And it's going to be detrimental also for our children in the neighborhood and the walkers. Although Gray Bard claims they're going to have a walkway, okay, around their development. Sure, it's going to be for their people. Okay, we can go in there, but it's all going to give them access, okay, to come out into the streets after they park their car on our streets. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Janet Gross. I'm at 114 Benson Avenue in Sayville, New York. As you decide what should be included in the updated draft scope document, please consider the following points. If you notice on the map that they show, the turning point counts were just the areas surrounding Gray Barn. Since I don't think there's many hermits going to be living in these apartments, you have to expand the area that affect the Sayville area, such as Terry Road and Bourne Boulevard, Tara Street, Cherry Avenue, Tara Street, Greeley Avenue, Lakeland Avenue, Manton Street, Railroad Avenue, Hidden Street, Railroad Avenue, and Montauk Highway. Also, you should expand the time from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. That includes the time the school traffic is there. And also consider when the train comes, the backup on Lakeland Avenue on both sides. The installation of the automatic traffic recorder should be also on Railroad Avenue and Montauk Highway, especially during the summer when traffic backs up from downtown Sayville all the way through West Sayville in the other direction, and Lakeland Avenue and Tariff Street. Also, what should be included is the number of parking spaces available and used at the Sayville Long Island Railroad Station. Since I figured maybe at the least amount 200 cars we're going to be using for the commuters and people visiting New York City, where are they going to park at the Long Island Railroad Station? Also, Gray Barn tells you about how the boom to Sayville downtown is going to be. That should be also studied. The amount of parking spaces are used and available at the peak at Sayville time. One last note is the DEIC studies the community character. Grain Barn has these lovely gable buildings, but I don't know where in Sayville there are 3- and 4-story buildings. Thank you very much.
Steve Berglund from Bayport, New York. And you're probably saying, what the hell's a guy from Bayport doing at something like this? I still have to go up Lakeland Avenue often. And I could just imagine what the increase in the traffic will be. Too much reverb here. The map that you put up with all of the intersections, as the woman in back of me pointed out, one of the major intersections there is where Johnson, Lakeland, and Tariff come together. And for my own personal greedy needs, that's my wife's favorite deli right there. You get too much traffic in there, I'm gonna wait even longer for those sandwiches that I like. My son started college in 1990. And I remember coming back, seeing what happened to this area that you're talking about, where the buildings are going to be. There were major storms that came through, causing flooding on Greens Creek. All of the houses on the Sayville side of Chester flooded in the backyards. And it went down over Tariff, down past Brook Street, into one of my favorite fish stores there. The runoff from what is being proposed could be devastating again. And I'm sure anyone along Chester Road on the east side can tell you that there's probably still examples of the flooding that happened back then. Many of the people who were here were at the meeting that we had on Sycamore Avenue. Mr. Reckler makes some beautiful buildings. I remember seeing the complex that he built just south of Southern State in Amityville. Amityville is not Sayville, and 4 stories is not Sayville, as the other woman said. When it was presented to Mr. Reckler as to why he picked 4 and if there would be an alternative, and that was up on the screen that you had in back of us, there was no alternative for him. Just keep that in mind. Thank you.
How are you? Joe Deal, 16 Gibbons Court, Sayville. I live across the street on Lakeland Avenue from the golf course. I'm very familiar with the property. I'm also a civil engineer and I design projects similar to this, so I'm very familiar with the environmental impact process as well. Obviously, it'll be influenced. Obviously, living across the street, I'll be influenced by the construction and the ultimate development and what ends up going there. And I did have concerns at first, but one of the things that made me feel a little more confident is understanding and having a thorough understanding of the environmental impact process and of all the things that we're speaking about tonight and mentioning. If these things do happen, it won't get approved, this project, because they will have to remedy these items as they go along, and that's part of the process that they're going to work through and remedy. So that's the good part about having the environmental impacts process. My concerns really being traffic and also the visual aesthetics of what we were doing, didn't want to see like a little mini city in a single-family residential area. When I looked at the plan and actually reached out to the developer himself and looked at the way he was laying everything out with the buffers around and taking that 26 acres of preserved area and not just putting it in the back corner, but rolling it around the buffer so there's a vegetated buffer so we're not seeing all the buildings, and then also the larger buildings being set in the middle of the site in the lower topography area also was more of a positive for me. I'm big on knowing that there's a good understand this is going to go forward. I'd rather work with the developer on a lot of the concerns that we have as a community and try to make the best opportunity for the community, because something is going to go here. It's zoned residential. I know a lot of people like myself might want something such as single-family residential. That's not what's in the marketplace right now. The other aspect.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could ask, we're keeping a record. Everybody can be heard on the environmental and infrastructure matters at this point only, please.
Yes. Traffic also. You know, what I asked for is this is going to be a phased development. After each phase, we redo traffic studies to see if the impacts for the design intent actually meet the actuality of what actually goes on out there. It's before each phase starts over, and work that into the study as itself. So, yeah, that's my points. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to me. My name is Cynthia Turk. I'm from 59 Cary Avenue. My concerns are a little bit broader in scope than just the immediate neighborhood. It is obvious what the negative impact will be on Sayville and the thousands of homes surrounding the neighborhood. But will you also study the negative impact and this huge overdevelopment will have on the town of Islip and Suffolk County? Decades ago, everybody heard about Islip having the landfill problems as we watched our garbage being shipped all over the world on TV. Have you solved that problem? Do we have plenty of room for garbage now? Have you solved the problems of our brown tide in our bays or keeping our watershed clean under the island? And now we're talking about sewage treatment plants. Has the county fixed and updated our existing ones? These are problems that need to be addressed first, and adding thousands more people, not just in the town of Islip, but all the rest of the townships, will only make things worse. As we know, it won't be long before all the other towns will follow your suit. Anyone who has driven through Oakdale Merge at any point knows that the traffic is a nightmare that we have been told cannot be fixed. And yet, we keep adding more and more people to the existing problems on our roads. I assume all of you live in Suffolk. You don't think that's going to change? You don't think that it's not going to affect you? Changing the face of Long Island to mirror a city will eventually change your neighborhood too, and your town. You drive on the same roads, drink the same water, and breathe the same air as we do. If it gets more difficult to run your errands or have the same quality of life that you have become accustomed to, just know overdeveloping Long Island was the cause. I was asking you today to protect our town, Long Island, and the resources and the quality of life all of us depend on. Thank you.
Is this good? No, I didn't think so. That's better. Thank you. My name is John Turk, 59 Cary Avenue. Live right across the street from the golf course, about 27 years. First, I'd like to say that everything that's being brought up tonight should definitely be scoped with all interest that possibly could be, and especially any homeowners within 500 yards of this enormous project. All of the pesticides, like everybody's been speaking about. This golf course has been over 100 years old. I wonder if they've ever done a project of this size with such a proximity close to a neighborhood as such as Sayville. I was in business in Sayville. I have 2 homes in Sayville. They're both being impacted by this. One's on Lakeland Avenue, so if you want to ask me about traffic on Lakeland Avenue, I can tell you about it. I was there before they put in the ambulance. That ambulance goes up and down Lakeland Avenue every 15 minutes. I wonder how much it'll go up and down with 2,500 more people involved within a quarter of a mile of it. And the merge, everybody knows about the merge, the groundwater. That's even news to me. I didn't know that that much groundwater could be affected all the way up into the bay. So there's many, many things I think we're all going to learn from this, and I'm pretty sure that these people do not want to change their mind on what they want to do. Maybe they made a bad investment, but you know, let's get it on so we can figure out what is going to happen across the street from my house. To the age of where I don't think I'll be able to afford to stay on Long Island. I would like to put up my home for sale someday, and I don't want somebody coming through my front door and asking me, gee, you got a beautiful home here, what a great view, what's going to happen? Gee, well, you know, we don't know. They may put up 27 buildings over there. Really, what are they going to look like? Oh, 3-4 stories tall. Yeah, go take a look at them in Amityville. Sayville is not Amityville, and I'm not putting Amityville down. Amityville is a very, very congested area. The Route 110 corridor has been the busiest road on Long Island for probably 30 years. Lakeland Avenue is not geared for anything like that or any of the surrounding areas. I'm a bus driver for the Connecticut School District. We have buses. We don't have enough buses for another 450 students. I don't know how much the taxes are going to go up for everybody in Sayville to accommodate all the rest of these kids that are going to be in the Connecticut School District. But my taxes are up there pretty high now. And I've worked since I'm 12 years old. I kind of want to ease out. I don't want to fight my way out. And I don't think anybody else in this room does either. Thank you very much for your time.
Hello, my name is John Tafe. I live at 91 Island Boulevard in Sayville. And I think that the scope should be expanded to include the traffic with the number of cars, the police tickets, the police reports of accidents, tickets around the area because people speed, and the response times for emergency services because the community ambulance is right on Lakeland. The effect it will have on people who run, bike ride in our community. There's not a lot of sidewalks in the area, so where am I not going to get hit? For houses, I think the visual impact should be studied, the noise impact, the light impact, the privacy that you have, and I'm afraid for if people trespass or try and vandalize in our area. I don't know them, how safe can I feel? And then I would also like to bring up environmental impacts. The Greens Creek, which is, Island Hills is a part of the watershed area, and Greens Creek requires that all excavations and topsoils, there's actually Chapter 15 Code of the Town of Islip, it requires that the owner must have written permission from the town board to remove all or any topsoil or anything, and they have removed all the greens from the golf course, which I want to know how much do they care about the environment, because they removed all the greens, yet there were tons of trees down, there was hazards all around the perimeter, and those haven't been cleaned up, but the greens have been. And I would also like the water impact. There, the park right there, I forget the name of it, I think it's Brookside County Park, right on Brook Street, and that was actually created due to the Clean Water Act, and I want to know how you can build such a big apartment or such a big, I don't know, thing where it doesn't impact it more. and the school district, there may be room for it. I don't know because I just go there. But that's not going to affect the quality of our teaching. We're going to have more kids, less teachers. Boston was turned into, which the school is where the school is, was turned into a like special ed, and they would have to change everything around. So I think that you should look into all this. Thank you very much.
Number 16 through 20, you can also step up. Thank you.
My name is Ellen Purz. I live on Chester Road in Sayville. And when I saw the map of the areas that will be studied with traffic, I think that the scope of study needs to be broadened. I don't know if you realize, but Chester Road is the alternative Lakeland Avenue. People don't want to go to where that deli that man loves so much is. They don't want to stop at that light. And so they come down Chester Road. Chester Road needs to be, I believe, a part of the traffic study. And as someone said, morning, afternoon, evening. Additionally, Chester, and in the summer too, because in the soccer season, because on either Google Maps or MapQuest, not sure which one, maybe both, Chester Road is given as part of the route for people to get to the soccer field on Cherry and Tariff. So Chester is not as much of a side street as it was probably developed to be. Additionally, as the young man just stated, there are lots of accidents that occur on Sunrise Highway and Lakeland Avenue. Part of the scope, I think, of study needs to include the number of accidents which occur, how many more accidents statistically there would be if that many more cars are on the road. Additionally, we have to see not only the Oakdale merge, but the cars are going up Lakeland Avenue. How will that impact Lakeland and Veterans? How will that impact all the way up if they're going up to the expressway? And I think that we need, a study needs to be done. I don't know if this is part of what you study, but there are studies out there that show that the towns that have a higher number of apartments in the town suffer 14% in property values. The property values go down 14%. Reckler has said that our property values will go up because people who are renting in the apartments will want to live in Sayville. Because there are fewer homes in Sayville, our property values will go up. I don't know, that sounds to me like the trickle-down theory of economics, and we know that doesn't work. I don't know on what basis they are making this claim, but I have read studies that show how a large multitude of apartment buildings is going to have an adverse effect on those of us who have lived there 40, 50 years. Thank you.
Ready, set, go? Oh. Hi, my name is Patricia Tui. I live at 69 Joseph Street, Sayville. I've been living in Sayville now 31 years. Me and my husband moved from Nassau County, and when we moved out to Sayville, my husband, after maybe a few months, started calling it Mayberry because it was so nice, and everybody knew everybody, and it's small and quaint, and everybody cared. It was a town that really cared about what was going on around them. Things we didn't want to happen, everybody got together and fought, and we made sure we didn't happen. This is a type of community that is in the Sayville, Bohemia area, Bayport 2, all in that area. We find it's a very solid, caring community. We would like to keep that community being the way it is. My concern, also being a cancer survivor, is the environmental impact. I have a master's in biology with a concentration in environmental science, and I was a biology teacher for high school. So I kind of understand the the environmental upheaval that's going to occur. Exactly when you rip up that land, the amount of pesticides that have been sitting in that earth for 100 years of golf, lawn maintenance, pesticides, you're going to end up nitrogen overloading back into the bay. It's going to get into the water cycle, maybe our drinking water, and definitely end up into the Great South Bay. Brown tide is already a problem, and it's going to continue to become a problem. You're just going to create even more of a problem. That's not a toxic brown tide yet, but it soon will be if you keep nitrogen overloading. Brown tide is very toxic and can be toxic to human, animals, and definitely fish. So that is a concern to me, the environmental impact that will have on the water quality in Sayville and the surrounding areas. I don't want to find out 30 years from now, if I'm still around, that Sayville now has become a cancer cluster because this environment, this development was allowed to go through, and all this, pollution and negative impact to the environment occurred, and now people are drinking pesticides and eating pesticides. That to me is a concern. So I would hope the scope would take a look at that. Other adverse impacts, I see the traffic. I sat on Lakeland Avenue the other day for 10 minutes just to get out of the flower shop, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It wasn't rush hour, nothing. The Oakdale merge, yes, I agree, that's going to be a nightmare too. Put 2,000 more people in our area, it's going to be a nightmare. The traffic's going to be a nightmare. What are the alternatives? I like alternative number 2 to your draft, no rezone. That would be a very nice alternative. Keep it AAA, at least minimal environmental impact in our neighborhood is what we want. That's what we want. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Good evening. My name's Kevin Shapiro. I live at 851 Smithtown Avenue in Bohemia. I'm here representing my family, my wife Kim, my son Derek, my son Devin, my son Kai, and my daughter Lila, as well as my neighbors and the surrounding communities. I have a wide-ranging group of concerns about a plethora of issues concerning what will amount to a population explosion, which is inevitably part and parcel to this proposal. The scope of this study must be expanded to include areas not only just around the golf course, but to the surrounding communities such as, but not limited to, Bohemia, Holbrook, Oakdale, East Islip, Patchogue, Bayport, and the like. We all share the same roads, we all share the same water, we all share the same air. This proposal threatens to have an irreparable harm and immediate and adverse effects on the entire area and personally to me, myself, and my family. This is your and our one chance, our one opportunity to do our due diligence to this process with this study. Every concern that's been brought up by every single resident here is exacerbated terribly simply by the density of this proposal. My first area of concern is that the entire study must be expanded, traffic, environmental impact, etc., and it must include an area that's far wider than that which was proposed. I live 0.08 away from the edge of this proposal. The map that was illustrated earlier does not include my block or any of the blocks near me, despite the fact of the close proximity in which we live. My road, Smithtown Avenue, along with every other road that runs north-south in the area, Walnut, Locust, Ocean, Sycamore, are all used as cut-through roads in between Veterans and Sunrise Highway. I can only imagine that adding nearly 1,400 apartments, as well as perhaps 3,000 or more people, will only exacerbate the traffic problems on these streets. I've had several pets killed on Busy Road as it is now without this traffic. I have 4 children that like to ride their bikes in the area. We live in an area with a single-source aquifer. We have nitrogen pollution, which has been increasing each and every year. I'll be done in one moment. One of the things you asked about is the need of this proposal. I'd like to point out that the population of Suffolk County has gone down this year, as has been the trend for the last 5 to 6 years. I wish that you consider these things when addressing this study. It needs to be expanded, also to include the tandem effect of the Ronkonkoma Hub project, which has already broken ground, the proposed project on the south side of that by the airport, and the 9,000 unit Heartland project. This study should not be done in a vacuum just for this area. It must include those as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brian Cowell. I live at 646 Sayville Avenue in Sayville. Thank you for this opportunity to express my opinion as you consider the scope of the environmental impact statement for the proposed Island Hills development. This project's massive scale and building heights are completely out of character with the neighborhood. And if built, Gray Barn Sayville would include the only 4-story buildings in the hamlet, increase the number of homes in Sayville by 23%, double the number of apartments in Sayville and Bohemia combined, all that on a 114-acre lot, degrade our environment and outstrip our infrastructure and community resources, including the fire and emergency services. This project is the opposite of smart development. Instead of being located downtown near restaurants and shops, and near the Long Island Railroad, it's being located where a car is an absolute necessity. Gray Barn Sayville would create a traffic nightmare. The environmental impact statement should look at these issues and how they would affect not only the quality of life of Sayville, but West Sayville, Bohemia, and Blue Point. The study should also consider the project in the context of Ronkonkoma Hub, where 1,450 apartments will soon be built, and also the Heartland development, which 3,500 apartments are approved for the first phase. My neighbors and I are grateful the state has mandated this environmental review process. Without it, we would not have a voice. While the developer's website states, quote, "For the past several months, we've been engaging with the community in a collaborative process, listening to their ideas and incorporating their suggestions," end quote. Until last month, when the developer spoke to the Bohemia Civic Association, I do not believe they had met with any project opponents since filing for a zoning change over a year ago. And while the developers insisted during the association meeting that they were good listeners, their actions said otherwise. Faced with a plea from a resident whose backyard borders on Island Hills to better maintain their property, the developer said they thought they were doing a good job, but if the person had a problem, they could call a number. Not a single one of the 6 executives from the development company could even say, "Gosh, we're sorry, we'll look into the problem." They didn't even bother to fulfill their promise to provide a phone number. With so little undeveloped land left in our town, I hope the planning board will use this review process to determine what kind of development at Island Hills would enhance the town's quality of life, rather than diminish it as the current proposal most certainly will.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Patrick Fife. I live at 19 Ryan Court, Bohemia, New York. I'm here in my individual capacity as well as on behalf of the Bohemia Civic Association, where I'm the president. Bohemia Civic Association is very concerned and has specific comments to the very general scope for the draft DEIS scope provided by the applicant. First issue has to do with zoning requirements. On page 1 of the draft scope, the developer states the proposal is to change from residence AA to a PDD, and that the development will be based on the residence CA requirements. The DEIS should explain why this project meets all the residence CA requirements, and if not, What requirements have not been met? It should also explain the appropriateness of using the residence CA requirements when the Town Code Section 68-166 says that those requirements apply under criteria when the site shall be located within a convenient distance to a downtown center or in the alternative existing retail services, which this project is not. Another criteria is this site shall maintain convenient access to public transportation services, which this site does not. Our second concern has to do with traffic. Page 9 of the draft scope provides limited study times of 4 to 6 p.m. and 7 to 9 a.m. These times are woefully insufficient. The traffic study should include when schools let out between 2 and 4 p.m., when the community arrives from the Long Island Railroad Station, which isn't until after 6:30 or 7 p.m. in most instances. Peak mornings also begin much earlier with school and bus traffic and end much later because of school and train commuters. ATR traffic recorders should be required for more intersections than those identified in the proposal that was shown above. And specifically, we should look at areas such as Mr. Shapiro mentioned, like Bohemia, where north-south roads are used as cutoffs. The applicant's claim that residents will use the Sayville Long Island Railroad Station is unrealistic due to the limited service. We expect many commuters will use the Ronkonkoma station. The current proposal doesn't have anything to address that. ATR traffic recorders should be also required for more than just 1 week. It should be recorded for different times of the year, including the busy summer season. There should also be a comparable traffic analysis for development of the property under the current AAA zoning, which will generate fewer residents and visitors. The DEIS, as far as land use, should identify, catalog all 3 to 4 story apartment buildings and complexes within the town located within 200 to 1,000 feet of single-family residences, such as this project. To the extent that any such projects like that exist, the developer should provide a visual study showing the impact on the surrounding community. In addition, there should be analysis of project need, there should be analysis of school district impacts, emergency services impacts. I think certainly the applicant through FOIL request to the Sayville Community Ambulance, the police department should be able to quantify the need that exists in the community right now and how this project will impact it. In addition, retail use should be addressed. If I may just go on for another minute or two, I have a couple more comments. Retail use, the developer's similar project to Amityville does have a retail component. I think the DEIS should discuss plans or potential for retail, and if retail is not going to be part of the project, should identify whether a covenant will be included that no retail will be used. Finally, in addition to the points that were addressed, I did think that the DEIS should include alternative studies beyond what is being proposed in the draft scope. They should compare all potential impacts studied in the DEIS under the current AAA residential zoning and also the possibility of developing the property in other manners under the zoning code, such as residential townhouse condominiums or a mixed use of townhouses and single-family homes. We note that these types of developments have a strong success.
You have that right.
Yes, I have two more sentences. Understand. Just that those types of development have had success in the town, and the developer should explain why that's not appropriate in this instance. Thank you.
This gentleman is yielding his time.
Myla Norglis, Sayville. Before filing your current application, did you consider other proposals? If so, what were they? Why are you moving forward with a zone change on a plan that is dense in the surrounding one-family community who's so opposed to this development? Did you acknowledge that the property is surrounded by one-family homes? In 2009, a planning study recommends the property keep its zoning designation, residential AAA, the highest zoning in the town, and that the property be maintained a recreational use to preserve the recreational opportunity to the surrounding neighborhood. What has changed since 2009, other than the hostile takeover of the residential-based country club by your corporation? We understand you have a close relationship with several government officials in town, including your land use attorney and a former town attorney who have worked together in the past. Could this impact the end result? With the proposed plan, will it conform with our dark skies zoning regulation? There is a great concern for the environment and the 100 years of pesticides that were used on the golf course, some of which predates what is FDA approved today? How will you ease the community's concerns when some of these toxins are released during construction process, when the soils are disturbed, have contributed to various forms of cancer? I've attached research. Does your bank require Phase 1 environmental site assessment, or is this project self-financed? You allowed the property to deteriorate. Why should you be granted the benefit of a zone change and a plan that exceeds the town zoning code for allowable density for multifamily use? Multifamily residences? Did you consider the depreciation on the homes in the community? Why is a density proposed in units? Why is a density proposed in the units per acre? And what is allowed by code by multifamily zoning, typically 9 per acre in a CA zone? Grayburn in Amityville has 45,000 square feet of retail food service spacing, including of Starbucks. Is there any retail food service planned as part of this project? If not, would you agree to include a recorded covenant on any approval that the property will never be able to have retail food service uses? Under the current plan, will the perimeter of the complex be fenced with limited access to surrounding neighborhoods? What form of a buffer will you use to not only protect the privacy of those that occupy your proposed development, but to also include the surrounding homeowners? Who are the owners on record for this property? What are the existing covenants on the property? What are the historical covenants on this property? Did the planning department consider what has already been approved and how adding additional apartment complexes can be a detriment to the communities and surrounding communities? If this is considered smart growth, when it's 1.5 miles from the Long Island Railroad and even further from Ronkonkoma Hub, where most people commute from? How is this smart growth? Traffic studies should be administered during the 4 seasons and the earlier times and later times to reflect those of children and blue-collar and white worker people in our neighborhood. And my last thing I will ask is that, will the impact also consider the emergency services? No zone change and maintain the existing AAA zone for one-family homes. I'm also submitting petitions that were signed.
Hello, my name is Betty Hingle, and I have grown up in Sayville, lived there most of my life. Sorry. I want to speak to a very broad definition of environmental impact. In 2009, the real estate market crashed, and the lending practices tightened very, very much. Hardly any of the banks were lending money. So it created a bubble of need for rental apartments. Thankfully, the economy has improved and lending practices have softened. The trend now isn't towards rentals. They're towards purchasing single-family homes. There was a recent New York Times article that talked about the effect of the surge of rental apartments in Long Island City and how there's a surplus and how there's a bidding war between amenities, between different landlords to keep their rental units filled. I was just on Gray Barnes Amityville's website yesterday, and the first thing that popped up was 1 month free for every application. So apparently, there may be a little bit of a problem with the Gray Barn project in Amityville if they're already offering 1 month free. My point being is, this is a very large-scale complex. I would like to see the scope expanded to see how the current lending practices impact the rental market and whether or not a complex this big is actually sustainable, and how it would adversely affect our community if it was under-rented, and how it will draw from the current rental properties that are in Sayville that are almost house, I think, 800 people. So we as a community basically are very welcoming to families and businesses that enhance the fabric of our community. This project will not enhance the fabric of our community. It will destroy it. There is already an existing zoning law in place, and zoning laws are in place to protect communities and the nature of that community. And I would ask that you stand by the existing zoning laws and have them build one-family, single-family units, which the trend now from millennials is to purchase properties.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ken Kolinicki, 35-year resident of Durham Road. I'm here with my neighbors to express my disgust in the proposed rezoning of the Island Hills property. I read a recent article in the Long Island Business News written by Steve Ballone, our Suffolk County executive. He boasted how he and his constituents have championed the concept of urbanizing Suffolk County. I find this repulsive. What is being done is overdevelopment of an environmentally sensitive island. Long Island and Town of Islip infrastructure cannot support the projects that are currently before our town board. Tell me, in regards to the following projects, are you kidding me? Heartland, Ronkonkoma Hub, 40 acres just north of the railroad, and just south of the railroad is the proposed 50-acre project that includes a 17,500 seat sports coliseum, which displaces our current town compost facility. So how environmentally concerned is the town? And last but not least, our beloved Island Hills project. I question the thought process that they govern under. Thank you.
John Coluccio, Chester Road in Sayville. My parents built my house in 1965. I purchased it a little over 25 years ago. I've been a certified Suffolk County foster home for 15 years. I grew up on Chester Road. I know what it was like. It was a quiet road growing up. We were able to play on that road from sunup to sundown. When Sunrise Highway was done over, all that changed. Chester Road is the only road that eases the traffic from Lakeland Avenue, making it a through traffic street. Why were we Chester Road residents penalized for the redoing of Sunrise Highway? Now we are going to be penalized again with the addition of these apartments and the countless number of cars that will use Chester Road. We residents of Chester Road have complained numerous years about the traffic on our streets. Stop signs have been put up. Suffolk County Police have done numerous patrols over years, handing out countless number of tickets. We have had News 12 do stories on it. We now have a blinking light at each end of the street, which proves it is already a recognized problem. We have Suffolk County transit buses come down Chester Road along with commercial vehicles that do no business on that street every day. I would also like to add that this complex will be fully self-sufficient. The town of Islip will not have to pick up a piece of garbage, pave a road, or plow a street. Where will the money go? You also notice on the site plan that there are exits to all the surrounding roads from the bicycle path. That will be strictly used for the overflow of traffic when the parking lots are full in the complex for the residents of the complex to park on those streets and walk into their apartments. We cannot have the amount of traffic that this will create in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Chris Ragusa, 626 Chester Road in Sayville. The Reckler Group has a lot of money. The residents of Sayville do not have enough money to fight the current Gray Barn propaganda onslaught. That's why we have elected officials. That's why we have you here. You're elected to power to fight for our best interests. If you've not heard enough people opposed, then you're not listening. It's too big. It's too much. Take a good look at it. Thank you.
Matt Francisco from Johnson Avenue. And yeah, I'm just concerned. I moved out here a few years ago, I'm sure like you guys and everybody here, to live the American dream, own a house, own property, you know, be around trees and not rent. I don't think renting is the American dream. And I just think this project is gonna, you know, the congestion, population congestion, the traffic congestion is just gonna ruin what our community is. And I had read in the news, I don't know if this is an idea or not, but Patchogue and Middle Island, they got grants from the state or the federal government, I'm not sure, to purchase lighted land and turn it into parks. And I don't see why can't we get a grant for this and, you know, possibly make it into a park and keep it open. And that or keep it AAA, that's what I think.
My name is William Belkoff. I'm at 660 Bohemia Parkway in Sayville, and the golf course is directly across from my house. We purchased my house in 1986 because of the view of the golf course, and that's why we decided to live there. And now it's being threatened with this Queens-style apartment house, which we do not want, and I haven't spoke to any resident that wants it. We're asking you guys to please help us and not let this go on. Some of the facts that you heard already is the traffic, the parking on our streets, the sewage treatment plant, the environmental impact, pollution to our neighborhood, and the whole concept of this is just ridiculous. It doesn't belong here. And we're asking you to please help us. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Meyer. Board members, thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. My name is Paul Rubel. I live at 562 Chester Road, Sayville. I also happen to be the chairman of the corporate law department at Abrams Fensterman. And I'm here to talk in part about something that lies 109 feet from the site, and that is the Sayville National Wildlife Refuge. It's larger than the Island Hills Golf Course. It is 109 feet away. We heard earlier that on the site, in the refuge, there is a federally endangered species plant. In fact, there are more of these plants in the Sayville National Wildlife Refuge than you can find elsewhere in the northeast of the United States of America. I'd like to suggest that in the draft EIS, the impact statement should be expanded to include an exhaustive discussion about the adjacent Sayville National Wildlife Refuge, which is managed by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service under the jurisdiction of the United States Department of the Interior. The Wildlife Refuge was established in 1992 when the federal aviation, I'm saying a lot of federal government because there is a lot of United States law involved in this hearing and DEIS. I'll continue. The Federal Aviation Administration transferred 26 acres of land to the Department of Interior, which started the Wildlife Refuge, and 101 acres is also being transferred. Now, it's important in connection with the endangered species, and you have pictures of these on page 13 of my book. It's important that the mission of the United States Wildlife Service in connection with endangered species is to prevent habitat degradation, and to quote the Wildlife Service website, loss is caused by increased development. Accordingly, the draft EIS should take into account the presence on the site of the National Wildlife Refuge. Also, I'd like to ask for the adverse impact of the project on the comprehensive conservation plan for the National Wildlife Refuge. And so in 1999, under the federal National Wildlife Refuge System Improvement Act of 1997, a comprehensive conservation plan, custom-tailored to the Sayville National Wildlife Refuge, was passed. And I would ask in conclusion that the environmental impact statement scope specifically address conformity or nonconformity with the comprehensive conservation plan. The last things I'll say quickly is that there are 6 responsible parties under federal law for the maintenance of the refuge. All of them need to be consulted. The United States Fish and Wildlife Service, the Nature Conservancy, the United States GSA, General Services Administration, the State of New York, and finally, the New England Wildflower Society have jurisdiction over the refuge. Thank you. Good evening.
Hi. Good evening. I'm Mary Novotny. I live on Terry Road in Sayville, across the street from Island Hills. I love Sayville like everybody else here, and it's hard not to get personal, so I won't. I'll try not to. But Sayville's a beautiful community, as you must know. I know you all know. And I'm just going to say a couple of things. So, according to the World Population Review, Long Island is the most populated island in any U.S. territory or state, and is the 17th most populous island in the world. If Long Island were a state, it would be the 13th most populous, but it would be first in terms of population density, with 5,400 people per square mile. It is one of the most densely populated regions in our country, and Long Island has 39% of the total population of the state of New York. Suffolk County has twice the area of Nassau County, but is much more densely populated. I read a report that the American Lung Association's 2016 State of the Air report found that Suffolk County continues to have the worst air quality in the state. This is the American Lung Association saying that local residents, which is us, everybody in here, remain at risk from health effects of unhealthy air. Again, the American Lung Association has printed this. This is the truth. It is a fact. So with us being so densely populated and having the worst quality air in the state of New York, how are we to add hundreds to thousands more people and cars? On a personal note, I grew up in Hicksville, moved away because it was becoming like Queens. I'm here 25 years, and I don't want to see that happen. Another thing is, I lived in Amityville, and there were drugs everywhere. I'm glad that Reichler tore down that trailer park, and it did improve their community. It will not improve our community. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Chris Record. I live at 728 Bohemia Parkway. I'm also a New York State certified residential real estate appraiser. Okay? First of all, there will be, as you've heard 100 times already, numerous adverse impacts due to the increased congestion of the cars. I don't even understand how this is being considered. 1,365 units in the middle of a residential community. It's beyond my comprehension, okay? The effects on emergency services, the effects on surrounding property values, it's been put forth that this would increase property values. This is something that I have some expertise. I've been an appraiser for 32 years, and I can tell you unequivocally, without any doubt, property values will go down. As you've already heard on numerous occasions, the vast population of the local area is against this. So you guys are appointed by our elected officials. Everybody's job is to represent our wishes and what's best for us. And I think I can't even think of one thing that makes this good for the community. I don't know anybody other than the people that are going to make a ton of money at this. I don't know anybody that's saying it's good for your community because of this, that, or the other thing. I haven't heard one good thing. I haven't heard anybody say it, even the guys that are trying to put a happy spin on it. My last thing is I highly recommend that our officials represent us. And I'll say that, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Board. My name is Mark Melinovsky. I live at 10 Sterling Place in Sayville, right across from the south end of the golf course. I enjoyed my years there. I'm not so sure I want to stay after this project, if this project goes through. 3 minutes is, there's so much wrong with this project for our community that 3 minutes is really not enough time. But I'll try to cover some highlighted concerns that I have. Obviously, as everybody stated, the scope of this project needs to be expanded more to consider traffic. It's just not a local thing anymore. It's going to affect many, many communities here on Long Island. The pesticides and herbicides that have been used in there, the disturbance of that soil is a major concern. Without our health, we have nothing. So that is a real important concern on that. Another concern of mine, we are located on the Atlantic Flyway. Many species of birds, many species of waterfowl have used this property, have used our community as a stopover on their migration north and on their way back south. This is going to definitely affect what these wildlife have. Where are they going to go after this? All right? Another concern, as was brought up earlier, this is at a headwaters part of the Greens Creek watershed. All right? Disturbance of that soil. Where are these contaminants going to go? The runoff from the parking lots and all the construction around. How is this going to divert water? Is it going to divert water away from the creek? It's no secret that every day we pump more water out of our groundwater than we're putting back in. The springs that once fed not just Greens Creek, but all the creeks here on Long Island are becoming drier and drier. We're just going to compound this problem by adding another apartment complex. It's just not a good idea for Long Island at this time. Another concern with that, there is a very small native population of brook trout left in that stream. Basically, brook trout are threatened on Long Island. They're hanging on by a small thread. If we change that watershed, we can kiss whatever is left there goodbye. We keep building and building and polluting, and it's time we said enough. Do not allow this zoning change. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Steve Bertolino, Baywood Lane, Bayport, New York. Batting so late in the lineup, it's very difficult to add to what's been so eloquently stated before I stood up. I've just handed to Jessica Joyce for planning, which I'd like to be made part of the record, is the 2009 comprehensive study by the County of Suffolk, Town of Islip, and the Town of Brookhaven about the Sunrise Highway corridor. I will submit in writing the key points that I brought with me tonight because 3 minutes will not be enough time. Some of the key points in that report, which is extremely comprehensive, talks about the cumulative infrastructure and traffic. Everyone here tonight has already spoken about the need to expand this. The Oakdale merge is an imperative expansion on this. You cannot allow this scope to go forward without the Oakdale merge. Senators Croce and Senators Boyle have been trying to secure funding for the Oakdale merge unsuccessfully. I do understand that something is being done. Under Town Law 261-3H, the Town of Islip, in granting certain benefits, if you will, to the applicant, has the right to extract from that applicant certain benefits back. It can be done in the form of cash payments. I think the scope should be expanded to find out what the cost per unit is. The Town of Islip should ask for 5% of the total bill. So if it's a $100,000 cost per unit, you got a $136 million project, that results in $8 million. Senator Boyle was looking for $30 million for the Oakdale merge. If this developer is going to cause an increase in the traffic, this developer should help pay for the reduction in the traffic. Very simple. In addition, the report is comprehensively setting forth the increase over the last 10 to 15 years. It's a 2009 study, an increase of 43% of the housing stock in this town, specifically Sayville, Bohemia, and Holbrook, to include these complexes. It's going to change the character of the area immensely. I'm running out of time. I want to leave you with this quote, which has already been said, but I think it needs to be repeated. It must be repeated, it must be remembered, and it must be adhered to. Since 1986, in the previous study, the town and the county have been trying to save what needs to be saved. And it says, consideration should also be given to the designation of a recreational zoning district in order to protect this valuable recreational use and preserve this existing oasis of space. This report was prepared, and that recommendation was extracted from the report. Gene Murphy, Dave Genoway, Dan Galizio, Jean Marie Brennan, all members of the former Islip Planning Department that you know. This has been looked at already. If the applicant doesn't like it, he can withdraw his application. Extract 5%, put it towards. If you do grant him the application, we could use sewers in Sayville downtown, take 5%, apply it to that, but don't give it to Balone, because he'll just squirrel it away to try to balance the budget.
Good evening. My name is Walter Chapman. I live on Mobile Street since 1964. I've seen a lot of changes in Sayville, and some of them were good, some of them were bad, but nothing like this. Never anything like this. Even NextRed wasn't like this. I can't understand why anybody would even consider doing this. They're going to drop a whole village right in the middle of our residential area, and you've heard all of the negative effects all night long. I agree with everybody. Everything about this project says negative, the way it's planned. I don't know any positive, I can't think of a positive thing either. But if they go along with the original plan, single-family housing with the zoning, I don't think anybody would be against it. Why they have to put these monster buildings right in the middle of a residential area, I just can't really understand it. And you're the ones that have to decide. I hope you think well on it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Pamela Raymond. I'm from fabulous Sayville, and I hope to stay there a long time. I was born in a factory town called Port Chester, New York, which Sayville is looking more and more like as we go along. It was overcrowded. My parents were poor immigrants from Ireland. My father ended up making a lot of money. He invented split-level housing. We moved to Greenwich, Connecticut, and found out we were in the middle of a bunch of Protestants, and we were miserable. So we came to the South Shore of Long Island, which is filled with Italians and Irish. And I feel very much at home here. I live across from the National Park, Fire Island. It is a beautiful place, and I wanted to stay that way. I looked at the fire department. There's a sign that says volunteers needed, the Sayville Fire Department. That's today, now. The railroads say, I've been taking my three-wheel scooter. I've got Parkinson's, and every morning going up to see, it's packed, the cars, as they are now. And the ambulance company, anybody I talk to, Don Hester, all the guys from the ambulance company, they're like, who's going to take, these are volunteers, these people. Who's going to take care of all these extra bodies? Excuse me for saying bodies. I also want to know why there's not a woman on this board. We're very sensible. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, I don't want to live in Nassau County. I don't want to live in Great Neck. I don't even want to live in Manhattan. You know, not that I could afford to. And I want to live in Sayville as it is now with a mix of blue-collar and white-collar people who all have something in common. We love our town. And I want to say yes to the simple life that we have now in our community.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Thomas Edmund Murray III, and my family has lived in Sayville and Bayport for 4 generations. My wife and I bought a house last summer in Bayport at 584 Bayport Avenue because we love the character of this neighborhood and the environment, which is now being threatened. I have some comments on the DEIS, the first being that the first page references extensive amenities and public spaces. I would like more information on what that entails, otherwise it will be impossible to determine the environmental impact. The fourth page references environmental reports and states that Phase 1s and Phase 2s will be summarized and attached, or excerpts attached to establish background conditions. It's very important that the entirety of these reports be published for the public and for the planning board. Now I want to move to the eighth page, which discusses the ecology. Several people have already discussed the proximity to the West Sable Wildlife Refuge and the sand plain gardenia, which is a federally endangered wildlife plant. I'd also like to note that it is the only landlocked refuge on Long Island, and the Island Hills and surrounding area, the connectivity is important between that and the fresh water of Greens Creek to the east. Further, I'd like to note that there's a lot of impacts from a development like this that extend far beyond the parcel itself. They call these edge effects, which affect light intrusion, storm water and associated pollution, the increased number and use of automobiles, and all of these things need to be included in the DIS. Further, the parcel has operated as a golf course beginning in 1927, and the chemicals and pesticides used there, especially prior to 1970s when environmental regulations were put in place, certainly the soil is most likely dirty and will need to be properly disposed of, as we know this town has had issues with in the past. Further, in addition to the sand plain gardenia, there are several species of animal that are there that are not federally endangered, but state endangered, including short-eared owls, northern harriers, which are listed as state threatened species, and vesper sparrows, seaside sparrows, whippoorwills, and nighthawks, which are all listed as state-listed species of special concern. This is all as part of the U.S. Fisheries and Wildlife Service Comprehensive Conservation Plan, which someone had mentioned earlier, and is readily available on their website. And I forgot to mention the peregrine falcons, which are actually federally endangered. Further, there are some data gaps regarding amphibians and reptiles. There are certain salamanders, the marbled salamanders, and spadefoot toads that are found in this environment, which are also listed as areas of special concern. And they need to be found, they only come above ground in the summer during rainstorms, in the fall during rainstorms, so if we're going to look at that impact, we have to look at the impact during that time. Further, I'd like to note with my last moments that no one so far has expressed any interest in renting any of these apartments, and all the community has stated that they are against this project. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening.
Hi, my name is Tom White. I'm from 84 Mobile Street in Sayville. Currently, I'm a proud resident, but that might change soon. We fled Nassau County about 20 years ago because of overcrowding. Now Sayville is in danger of becoming Roslyn. I bought my home 17 years ago because of Sayville's bucolic feel, as well as because of the numerous outdoor activities available to all of us here. These activities depend on clean air and water. On any given sunny day, any of us can view fishermen, kayakers, boaters, and beachgoers. The clamming and oyster industries are just starting to make their comeback. Why would we now jeopardize the Great South Bay and our drinking aquifer with a totally monstrous, out of character with the neighborhood development project? My property borders a federally protected nature preserve on two sides. It's been spoken about here numerous times tonight. And my family cherishes this. On any given day, we can view deer, fox, turkey, owl, and an occasional pheasant. There's a myriad of birds to be seen in addition to this. I've often viewed some of these species on the Island Hills golf course over the years. If displaced, what's to happen to this wildlife? The proposed Reckler development plans are simply unacceptable in its current form. It's like dropping a miniature Brooklyn in the middle of our town. Ask any Sayville or Bohemia resident about this subject, and their mood changes immediately. I know progress is eventually probably going to happen, but 75 luxury homes and a 9-hole golf course would be way more palatable to 95% of the citizens around here than this monstrous, massive project. This project jeopardizes wildlife, the aquifer, the air. The noise and the traffic, the overcrowded schools pose a threat to all of our children and families. Increases in smog, crime, first responder response time, traffic, and pollution will all cause irreparable damage to the aquifer and the disturbing of dormant golf course toxic chemical residues such as Roundup. We beg of you, anybody on the planning committee, anybody involved with the environmental decisions around here, any politicians, please look around at these concerned citizens in this auditorium. Please don't gloss over the environmental concerns of these citizens. Please do a thorough soil, water, air, and traffic study and take your time with it. No zone change, no apartments, never.
My name is Eileen Tisnar, and I reside at 43 Munson Lane, West Sayville for 26 years. I am a very proud business owner actively involved in our downtown village of Sayville. For the last 10 years, I've enjoyed the people coming and going in our community. We know each other by name. This development, I've quietly watched as people have argued both sides. I've tried to gain as much knowledge as possible before ever speaking up. My main concern for Gray Barn being developed is, first of all, 3- and 4-story buildings. I cannot see that. That will ruin the antiquity and the quaintness of our beautiful Sayville. My next thing is, I am guilty myself of cutting through from Brook Street and going to avoid the traffic already on Lakeland Avenue, and I utilize what my son called for 24 years the hilly road called Chester. We've traveled slowly. We know there's a lot of children on that block, some being my own clients' children. I cannot possibly see that being utilized as a traffic cut-through or crowded for those children that play already on that block. My other concern, retail. I say not a drop of it, not a vending machine, not a candy machine, not a cup of coffee, nothing should be sold in this development whatsoever. I really need that scope to be really looked at. As it is, we do everything, backflips every festival possible to gain people to come down to our beautiful hamlet. If the traffic increases on Lakeland, Railroad Avenue, where my own business is, where I could barely get into the parking lot of my office, now as it is, the train station overflowing, children, cars cutting around buses, almost killing children as it is without the development. So I really think that the scope needs to be also, like everybody said, early morning, Saturdays, when people come into the train station, going over for Fire Island. As it is, there's no parking over by that train station to begin with. So I ask, no retail, not a drop of it, not a penny, not to be spent unless it's spent in our downtown beautiful village of Sayville. Thank you.
My name is Skip Olson. I live on Karshik Street in Bohemia. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, the people who live near this property have real concerns with how its development will affect their lives. As a group of dedicated public servants, you and other officials of the town of Islip, both appointed and elected, have the responsibility to weigh these legitimate concerns against the overall benefit to the residents of Islip Town and Long Island as a whole. There are a multitude of studies that suggest this type of upscale rental housing is in fact needed on Long Island to help retain two primary groups of people, those under 35 and those over 50. The brain drain of our recent college graduates is well documented, and there simply isn't enough inventory of quality rental apartments that provide the type of lifestyle and amenities that the millennials are looking for. There are good high-paying jobs to be had on Long Island, but if the qualified workers choose to live elsewhere, those companies will also relocate and take the jobs with them. Likewise, as those college graduates finally move out of their parents' basements, many of those parents look to downsize into smaller, maintenance-free living situations. I, for one, can't wait to put my snowblower on Craigslist. Now, the hearing today gives the public the opportunity to voice their concerns about how this project will affect them and ask for reasonable solutions to help mitigate those issues. You've heard the concerns from the people that come before me. Increased traffic, impacts on the school district, the police and fire departments, the water districts, the sewage treatment, and that the construction process disrupts the neighbors as little as possible. All of these concerns and more need to be addressed in the DEIS, along with the impact on our taxes, whether positive or negative. Additionally, there needs to be significant public benefits that are written into the covenants, including any property dedications to the appropriate public agencies that may be needed to accommodate future transportation improvements should they be required. The developer should be held responsible to provide funding for these types of improvements, along with a concrete plan to connect the new residents to the train stations in both Ronkonkoma and Sayville, and more importantly, the restaurants and businesses in downtown Sayville. I would also suggest asking for an increased percentage of workforce housing to make it more affordable for our younger generation. And if this project does get approved, there should be absolutely no additional burden on the town or county to maintain any of the new roads or the proposed Greenway Park that encircles the property. The Planning Board has the power to insist on provisions that will specifically address these concerns. The Recklers are well-regarded professional developers. They are surely prepared to make compromises to accommodate the community and their concerns. Thank you.
How much did he pay you? How much did they pay you?
All right, gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to address you face to face. I'm a little confused as to what we're even doing here at this point with the environmental study. A few years back, a very wealthy man in Nassau County, Charles Wang, was trying to approve the lighthouse project. But he did not go through with the environmental impact study because it was too costly when he got the idea that he was not going to get approval for the project. So I'm wondering, am I just wasting my time coming here and voicing my opinion? Has the green light already been given to Reckler? Why are we here? They're going around and they're buying adjacent properties in the area. You don't make that kind of thing unless you kind of have the idea that you're probably going to get your way on this. And also, it's very funny to me that the map that you had up there had Bohemia Parkway and Terry Road. Come this way. I live on Mobile Street, 76 Mobile Street in Sayville. Behind my home is the federal wildlife sanctuary. Excuse my speech because I did have a stroke, but this is important, so I'm going to humiliate myself in front of everybody speaking so you guys understand how important this is to me. You're talking about, I have a 5-year-old that I take in the backyard to play on our playground, and every once in a while we'll see a different animal just pop its head through our fence. And I want to know why their study did Bohemia and did Terry, but did not include the land that is adjacent to the actual wildlife preserve. Was faux pas? Or, hey, let's cross our fingers and nobody brings that up. Kind of seems a little suspicious to me. So I'm hoping that tonight you are actually listening with open ears. You are hearing our concerns, realizing that you are appointed by us, not the Recklers. And you will take what we're saying seriously, think on it, sleep on it, don't just go with the money. All right, that's all I'm saying.
Just for the record, sir, you're Eugene Nelson for the record. That's my name. Thank you.
Good. Hi, my name is Kim Richards. I live on Dorham Road in Sayville. I actually live right next to the golf course on a dead end where I used to live there. I grew up there, moved away to go to school, get my master's degree, and do what I had to do to save money to go back and buy the particular home that I grew up in. One of the main reasons is that I knew the golf course was AAA zoned, thinking that I would never become anything else besides maybe homes. So I do travel back and forth to Nassau County. The reality of saving up all this money and paying my mortgage every month thinking that I would be okay with anything of golf course or green space or just single-family homes. And like the gentleman said earlier, we don't have as much money as regular. I don't know, maybe I went into the wrong business as a teacher, but we don't have the money to fight this, and we are looking for you and your support to help us do the right thing here. When something is zoned for something, I thought it was supposed to be zoned for a particular reason, and stay that way. As for the environmental studies, my particular house floods a lot in the backyard, and I've grown up there since the 70s, early 70s. Certain times of the year, it actually becomes marshy in the backyard and floods through from the top of the golf course from Cary all the way down to Durham Road, down to Chester, and all the way back out to Queens Creek. Where actually at times you could dig down a couple of feet and it becomes filled with flood and puddles. The wildlife in the golf course, there is wildlife. There was deer, there's fox, there's hawks, all sorts of things that I see because I sit out on my back patio and I have 200 feet where I could just look right over the fence 3 feet away into the golf course. So there is quite a bit of wildlife endangered. I'm not sure. I don't know, they've been disappearing as it's been posted on social media though. There was construction on Marion Street, which is 1 block up from us, which used to be a dead end as well. And after they did construction with these homes, they had problems with the underground stream, which caused more severe flooding for the other homes in the area as well as their homes. So taking away the green space and the soil absorption and the aquifers by building large parking lots and large buildings would decrease the absorption of groundwater in the aquifers and watersheds. The traffic studies, you've heard over and over again. I mean, just to go from Lakeland Avenue to Connecticut Avenue takes me the same amount of time as it does to get from Connecticut Avenue all the way west of Meadowbrook Parkway into Uniondale to go to work. So it's ridiculous as it is, and to add several thousand more cars would be detrimental. Basically, like, we vote for you, we trust you, we hope you do the right thing and support your community with this. And look into this and really support us as individuals and as a community as a whole. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Francis O'Brien. I live at 684 Bohemia Parkway, directly across from the 12th green on the Island Hills Golf Course. We've been living there for 21 years. When my wife and I and our young son moved into that residence in 1900, we were not welcomed by a developer like Reckler. We were developed by our neighbors, the people sitting behind me who have already spoken. Okay? I'm going to implore you to choose progress over politics. While Island Hills was not a perfect neighbor, they were a good neighbor. Yes, we found golf balls in our front lawns, and my children did pick up a few 4-letter words from some of the golfers who missed their putts, but they were a good neighbor. How does this project fulfill a need, I have to ask you? It will not add value to these homes, as several families on my block have already moved in anticipation of this project going through. This is not building a neighborhood. According to Supervisor Carpenter, there are currently 350 vacant homes in our town. This would be a better thing to develop than developing the Island Hills Golf Course. In addition, the town is financially solvent, as stated in her State of the Town address, that we did not need to touch the fund balance this year, so I do not see how this project is going to help the community. Now, I would be a direct neighbor of this project. I've had no contact from Reckler Associates, but I have seen how Reckler deals with people. Past 14 years, I've worked as an educator in the Amityville School District. The Gray Barn project is directly up the street from where I work. What was there before was a trailer park for families of lower income, several of whom were my students, who came to me with tears in their eyes saying, Mr. O'Brien, we are being evicted. We don't know where we're going. We're being displaced from our homes because we cannot afford the rent in these new apartments. Now, previous environmental studies have said that the Oakdale Murray is inadequate for this increase in traffic and that the space should be left as an open space. In addition, the excess vehicles from this project will spill over into the surrounding residential neighborhoods. This is not being addressed by Reckler Associates. The area is zoned for single residents for a reason. 1,400 apartments with the needed waste treatment is not progress. Lastly, this project will not make Sable a desirable area, as tearing up the green space will affect the wildlife, such as the foxes, owls, and other animals that are a pleasure to see every day. Looking at a 4-story apartment building is not a pleasure. Thank you.
Greg Pepe, Islip, New York. I would like to say that the build-out and the scope of this project is actually less than what you approved up in Heartland, which is 2.5 times. But more importantly, when we have the Oakdale merge, no matter what you do, when you put 6 lanes there, it's all going to bottleneck sooner or later, whether you're going east or westbound. And you're looking into millions of dollars to do this such thing. It's going to come up to, for us to pay, the taxpayers, the single-family homeowners are going to foot the bills for the Recklers, for the Walkoffs, okay? So, and another thing, this board, the planning board, you approved no higher than 5 stories on the Heartland project, but in the wisdom of Supervisor Carpenter, she wants the Heartland's buildings now to go 10 stories, yet reducing the footprint down to 113 acres. So what is it for the Recklers to put forward to Carpenter, who's taken thousands of dollars in contribution money for a campaign, along with the rest of the board, to say, look, we'll do this. We'll scale it down to 80 acres, but we can go 10 stories up. Okay, but even at 4 stories, if you're out of the Great South Bay, what are you going to see? Like the federal building, the federal court building, a skyline? We're going to have a skyline on the South Shore. Okay, so what I say is, forget the 5 or 6 that are here with Myers here on the side, and let's put this to a referendum vote on the ballot. Let the voters vote on it, up or down. All right, and then we'll see what happens then. Because we don't want urbanization out here. We don't want New York City out here. You want city living, go 50 miles, 40 miles westbound, and get an apartment building over there, all right? Well, we're single-family homeowners, okay? And if this goes ahead, I say let's do it like we did with the convention this past November, right? We either vote yes or no to these zone changes. Keep it AAA. He knew when he bought it, right? He knew that it was AAA zone, the same way Wolkoff knew it was AAA zone up in Heartland, all right? 453 acres zone AAA when he bought it from New York State. Reckler, on the same token, knew it was AAA when he bought it. He's got to live up to it now. Okay, just like when my neighborhood, I'm in AAA. If I want to put an apartment building up, you think that my neighbors aren't going to come storm me or say, hey, look, what's the matter with you? Huh? So we have these zoning laws for a reason, all right? And you're all bought off, all right? All of you, from Carpenter to everyone that sits on that board, all right? And I'm an independent blank voter. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat because they both stink, all right? So do what you want, but I think a referendum vote is needed on the ballot.
Hi, I'm Dr. Carrie Lopez, and I'm at 750 Durham Road in Sayville, and I have a practice on Middle Road in Bayport as well. I'm very much out of my comfort zone. I'm not a public speaker, but I am passionately against this, so I needed to get something on record. Aside from all the concerns with the environment and the water, which I completely agree with, this is going to be horrific, I just want to reiterate the impact on schools. A couple weeks ago, I drove by the apartments off Lakeland Avenue over by the Regency, and a bus stopped, and I saw all these kids get on, and I said to my husband, that just filled the whole bus. That's like probably a tenth of the size of what is going to be dropped into Sayville, and I swear kids were standing on this bus. I can't imagine how many buses are going to be necessary for this, and what that's going to do to our taxes, and how that's going to inundate our schools. It's the teacher-to-student ratio is going to be horrible. I think the education is going to be impacted immensely, and I can't see how early buses we're going to have to pick up. At this point, they pick up at 6:15 to catch all the kids in order to get to the high school already. I can't imagine where that's going to be. Aside with the traffic, Lakeland, is very, very congested, At this point, if you go on Google Maps and you want to get to the soccer field at the end of Durham Road, Google Maps will put Chester Road as a cut-through. They did put the stop sign at the corner of Chester and 3rd. My son has a bus stop there. I can assure you, people don't even brake. So it's not doing anything, and it's people fly down that road. I have 3 kids. I won't let my kids even trick or treat on Chester Road at this point because I'm afraid they're going to hit by a car. So I can't imagine what it's going to do if 2,500 parking spaces and 1,300 units of apartments go in, because I just think that's crazy. Anyway, I had to get something on record, and I am requesting no zone change and keep it for existing single homes. That's all. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Greta Ford. I grew up in Sayville, and for the past 12 years I lived in Patchogue Village. Just this past summer I was able to return to my community. I always considered Sayville my community, and my husband and I bought a house in West Sayville on Brook Street. I think I haven't heard a single positive thing as a resident about the new construction. I'm most concerned about traffic. I live on Brook Street, and already it's a cut-through for people who want to go to Montauk Highway. My children go to Cherry Avenue Elementary School, and that's a cut-through also for people who go to Montauk Highway. I walk my children to school, and I have to take the back street, or what I consider the back street, and even then I see cars racing up and down the road. I won't even take my dog to the dog park on Cherry Avenue because I feel like it's already so traffic ridden. My next concern is property value. I just returned to Sayville, and already I'm wondering, did I make a mistake? I can tell you, having lived in Patchogue Village for 12 years and watching all the development there, it didn't increase my home value. It didn't increase the village schools for my children. I was very active on the PTA, and I didn't see any benefit for the single-family home owners to having these huge 3- and 4-story apartment buildings on our main street. Next, just like others have mentioned, I'm concerned about environmental impact. I am concerned about friends and family who've already been breast cancer survivors and how they might feel if toxins are released from the soil. And again, their children and their children's children are put at risk. So lastly, and this probably is what spurred me to stand up and speak, I'm concerned about going on record and being heard, because I feel like I vote, and I want to know that you guys are responsible to your constituents. I know that civilians have a very long memory, and I think that we as a community do not want this project, and you have a responsibility to hear us. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are all the cards we had this evening for people to speak. I'm going to turn to the Commissioner first.
Good evening, Ron Meyer. I'm the Commissioner for the Town of Islip Planning and Development Community, 655 Main Street, Islip, New York. Again, I want to thank the Planning Board for hosting this environmental scoping session, not a change of zone public hearing. We encourage the public to continue to participate. We will post periodic updates as we've done in the statuses of projects. We encourage all involved parties and the public to monitor the Town of Islip website homepage for the continued status of this. The next step in this process will be that the town staff will gather tonight's comments. We are accepting written comments until the close of business on Friday, April 20th. We will take any planning board comments. We will take any involved state or county or regional land use or transportation agency comments, and we will further those to the town board possibly sometime in May or June. The town board, being the designated lead agency, will then review and adopt what the final scope of work is for the developer to analyze. The scope of work that's currently on the town website, as well as what's been viewed tonight, is the developer's proposal. It will be more than likely that there'll be additional changes and comments. Again, we welcome the comments of the public and anyone. We take it to heart, and we make this process transparent. Thank you for participation this evening.
Thank you, Commissioner. And just to echo what the Commissioner said, I want to thank all of you who came out this evening and spoke and provided input for us on the environmental and infrastructure concerns we have. Those of you who live in the community, it's important for us to hear from all of you, so we thank you for that, so it can be considered. At this point, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Commissioner, I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting tonight and to keep it open for public comment.
There's a motion by Mr. Brown to adjourn tonight's meeting, leaving it open for written comment until April 20th. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Ms. Mulready. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? We're adjourned. Thank you.